Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by a mysterious forest, an extraordinary adventure unfolded that would forever change the lives of a devoted teacher and his curious students. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of trees, they illuminated a small school nestled on the edge of a thick forest. This was the only school in a remote village, and Mr. David, a devoted teacher, had spent more than 20 years of his life educating the children here. Despite the school's lack of resources, Mr. David always strived to impart lessons that extended beyond textbooks, teaching values and humanity. The students loved him, although they sometimes found him a bit peculiar. He often spoke about the forest next to the school, a place shrouded in mystery and feared by locals due to generations of haunting tales. The forest isn't as scary as people say, Mr. David would tell his class. It holds secrets that only the brave and curious can uncover. One day, after class, a group of curious students approached Mr. David and asked about the forest. To their surprise, he didn't dismiss the idea of exploring it but instead encouraged them. If you truly want to learn something extraordinary, he said, meet me at the forest's edge tomorrow morning. Trust me, you won't regret it. His words left Anna, Tom, and Max, 3 close friends in the class, unable to sleep that night. Anna, though timid, was intrigued. Tom was excited, ready for an adventure. Max, skeptical as always, couldn't resist the challenge. Not wanting to be left behind, the 3 decided to meet Mr. David at the forest the next morning. At dawn, the students gathered at the forest's edge. Mr. David arrived with a large backpack and his usual enigmatic smile. Are you ready? He asked. The group nodded. A mixture of anticipation and nervous energy coursing through them, they stepped into the forest. The sunlight dimmed under the thick canopy, creating an atmosphere of serene mystery. Mr. David led them down a narrow path lined with faintly glowing stones. This isn't just a forest, he explained. It's a classroom. But not the kind you're used to. Their first stop was a crystal clear pond. Mr. David asked them to look closely into its surface. What do you see? He prompted. Anna, Tom, and Max leaned over. At first, they only saw their reflections. Slowly, other images appeared, forgotten memories, buried dreams, and hidden fears. This pond shows us who we truly are, Mr. David explained. To learn anything, you must first understand yourself. The journey continued. Their next destination was a towering ancient tree. Mr. David instructed each of them to climb up and pick a fruit from a different branch. Upon descending, he asked them to taste their fruits. Anna's was sweet, Tom's was tart, and Max's was bitter. What do you think this teaches us? Mr. David asked. After a moment, Anna hesitantly replied. We can't predict what we'll get when we make choices. But every choice has its own value. Exactly, Mr. David affirmed. Life is like this tree. Each branch represents an opportunity. And you must embrace whatever comes with it. As they continued, they encountered an injured fox. Surprisingly, Max, often the most indifferent, was the first to kneel down and help. Together, they bandaged the fox and carried it to a safe den. Even the smallest act of kindness can change a life, Mr. David remarked. The group soon found themselves in a dense part of the forest where vines hung low, forming a natural labyrinth. This is your next lesson, Mr. David said. To move forward, you must work together. The students hesitated at first, but they quickly realized that they needed to rely on one another to navigate the maze. Tom climbed trees to scout the path. Anna used her sharp memory to remember key turns. And Max cleared the way with a stick, cutting through the vines. They eventually emerged from the labyrinth, feeling a new sense of camaraderie and teamwork. At the edge of the labyrinth, they met a young girl named Lily, who had been lost in the forest. Lily, who was initially frightened, joined the group after Mr. David reassured her. Her presence added a new dynamic, as her own knowledge of the forest paths proved invaluable. After their break at the waterfall, Mr. David led them further into the forest. The air grew cooler, and the atmosphere shifted to something even more magical. They passed through a grove where the trees glowed faintly in the twilight, their leaves shimmering like tiny stars. Mr. David paused to explain. This grove is home to a rare species of tree that absorbs moonlight. These trees taught early scientists about the connection between light and life. As night fell, the group arrived at an open meadow. In the center stood a massive stone sundial. This was used by ancient villagers to measure time and seasons. Mr. David said, "It reminds us that time is one of the most valuable resources we have." Before they could move on, the students noticed an engraving on the sundial. It read, "To find the future, you must walk with the past." Mr. David explained, "Every step we take is influenced by those who came before us. Learning history is not just about the past, it helps us build a better tomorrow." As they prepared to continue, dark clouds began to gather overhead. A sudden storm broke out, forcing the group to seek shelter in a nearby cave. The cave was damp and dark, but its walls were covered in ancient drawings depicting scenes of people coexisting with nature. Mr. David used the opportunity to teach them about the history of early humans and their reliance on the environment. The storm raged on, and the group decided to start a fire for warmth. Max, using the knowledge he had learned from Mr. David in previous lessons, led the effort to gather dry wood and ignite the fire. Sitting around the flames, they shared stories and reflected on their journey so far. The storm eventually subsided, leaving the group feeling more connected than ever. Eventually, they reached the edge of the forest, where a small wooden cabin stood hidden behind thick ivy. Inside, the cabin was filled with ancient books, tools, and maps. Mr. David explained that the cabin had once belonged to a scholar who dedicated his life to studying the forest. "This forest is more than a place of beauty," he said. "It's a library of knowledge. Everything here teaches us something. From the smallest leaf to the tallest tree." The students spent hours exploring the cabin. Anna was drawn to a book about medicinal plants. Tom found maps of constellations. And Max discovered journals filled with stories of courage and resilience. Lily, fascinated by a collection of poems inspired by nature, found her own spark of creativity. Mr. David let each student choose a book to take home, saying, "These books will teach you not just what you want to know, but what you need to learn." As they left the forest, the students reflected on everything they had seen and learned. Anna felt braver. Tom felt more curious. Max felt a newfound compassion for others. And Lily discovered a love for storytelling. "This journey isn't the end," Mr. David said as they reached the school. "It's the beginning of your exploration. Always keep learning. And always share what you learn." In the weeks that followed, the four friends often returned to the forest, uncovering new wonders and sharing their discoveries with their classmates. Anna began cataloging the plants she found. Tom observed natural phenomena and wrote about them. Max started a journal documenting their adventures. And Lily began composing stories inspired by the forest. The enchanted forest became more than a place to learn, it became a symbol of growth, curiosity, and the power of education. Though the story may end here, its lessons live on in the hearts of those who dare to explore the unknown. Thank you for taking the time to journey with us through the enchanted forest. We hope the story inspired you to embrace curiosity, kindness, and the love of learning.